as you may know by a video that I posted before, if you don't know what it is, I'm gonna put it right there. I did a video about two different IEMs that I've actually purchased that I was using for my daily use. One being the Moondrop 2 and the other one being the, oh my god, the Lecture S12 Pro, which is a planar. So because of that, I kind of got a little bit more interested in doing a lot more IEM stuff. So luckily, a friend of mine, his name is Triistenfps, and I will go ahead and link his shit below. By the way, he is probably one of the better Call of Duty FPS players that I've ever met in my life. So if you want to give him a gander, I'll put his Twitch and his YouTube under everything like that. But anyways, so he decided to let me try out the Blessing 2 Dusk edition, which is the ones that were, it was the Blessing 2s that were tuned by Critical, which we all know how much of a Critical fan I am, because, you know, he does good works. And the fact that he does good works is, you know, it's good enough for me. Yeah. So because of that, I decided, hey, I should probably do a little, like, review of these things. And it's probably going to be my more in-depth review of something. And I've never really done this to this extent where I've taken a bunch of different notes. I have a shit ton of notes right here that I actually took while listening to different types of music. Basically, different types of amplifiers, like one just being like a laptop amp and the other one being a dedicated audio interface that has a little bit better of an amp. I don't really have any externals, like I don't know, like any of the shit audio stuff. I still laugh whenever I listen to that. So I guess let's kind of get into it. So from what I've read and from the graph that I looked at from Critical, I'll post it right here. These are meant to be, I think he called it IEF neutral, which is more of a neutral sounding IEM that you can use for multiple different types of content consumption, editing, or if you wanted to monitoring of either your camera or your stream or anything like that. So what I found out is these are meant to be on the higher end of, the lower end of like mid-tier, or maybe just like extremely mid-tier. Because I've seen IEMs for like $16 and I've seen IEMs for like a couple $1,000s. So I think because these retail at about, I think it was $319 at the filming of this video, these would be like low end of mid-tier, because I feel like mid-tier would probably be about like $600 to $700, but again, still very new. So I might be incorrect. This could be like the end of, or the beginning of top tier. I don't know. I don't have a tier list, or I don't have some sort of rating system, because yeah, still new to it. So the specs for these things, they have a 10mm dynamic driver, which this is the first time I've listened to a dynamic driver. This is the first time I've listened to a dynamic driver, because the other not higher end, but my better IEMs, the S12 Pros, are a planar driver. So this is actually like my first time listening to something that isn't meant to just be quick and fast, quick and fast, quick and fast. Because this is an IEM, it has an impedance of about, I think it was 10 ohms. So pretty much these can be ran by almost anything. It can be ran by a laptop. It can be ran by just a regular phone. It can be ran by pretty much any type of DAC, as long as it pushes out 10 ohms. I think, or it was a sensitivity of 117 decibels. Decibels. And the frequency response for this thing is 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. If that interests you, these IEMs, the connector type is a removable 2-pin, so you're pretty much going to be able to get a new cable for it whenever you want, and it shouldn't be even close to a big deal. All right, so let's go with the packaging. I didn't have any packaging. These were given to me by a friend who packed them with a microphone that I'm fixing for him, which I might actually do a video on that later. So keep your eyes out if you like soldering and microphone stuff. Just saying. So From what I did see on the internet, this came with a really nice little zippered case, and it came with the IEMs, and it came with the cable, which is a nice, really nice cable, and it came with a few little different silicone tips, which I'm not going to deny. I'm not mad that I didn't get the silicone tips because I honestly just used the spring ones from Moondrop anyways. So okay, so let's get into the build quality of this thing. So we're gonna just kind of, I'm gonna go over the accessory build, and then I'm gonna go over the actual IEM build. So the cable, from what I understand, it looks like it's a nice little copper cable that has a like silicone shielding around it, and it's really sturdy. And whenever you put it over your ears, it actually really, it keeps right up here where it has that extra little bit of rubber that kind of keeps the, whatever it's called, it keeps the shape around the ears. That is really solid, really stiff, but also not to the point where it's rubbing up against your ears and it really kind of just bothers behind your ears and gives you a weird rash, and then you wonder where it came from, and then you're like, oh my god, what did I get? It's your typical IEM cable, but it feels really solid and it feels really substantial. Next, let's get into the IEM actual build. Looking at them, I thought they were like an injection molded kind of plastic, but apparently it's not. It's not an injection mold. It was actually it was created by an ultra like precise 3D printer, like a medical grade 3D printer, which I thought that was really interesting because like you really look at these things and you're like, okay, so this had a whole bunch of its internals put in there and then it was just molded to it. No, this was precisely printed by a super expensive 3D printer. And because of that, all of the ear canals are perfect and everything is exactly to where it needs to be able to get the premium sound that you're going to be getting from these things. By the way, it's also used with like a medical grade UV resin. So there's that if you're interested. On the outside of these things is just like a little brushed stainless steel like shield. I guess it would be like a shield on the outside. It's basically brushed steel and it has like the little Blessing 2 insignia on it. So because of that, it just looks nice. It looks nice and it looks precious. It looks pretty, you know? Okay, so now when it comes to the part that actually goes into your ears, you would expect to have it like one of those little grooves that your tip would go into, but this doesn't have those. These are just actually relatively larger tips. Like the part that goes into your ear canal is just relatively wider than I've seen on any of like my true wireless buds or any of the other IEMs that I use. And because of that, I thought it was going to be I thought it was going to stretch out my ear canal and kind of cause a lot of fatigue. It doesn't. I thought that it was just kind of something that they really didn't think about in like the meetings for the engineering of this thing, but apparently it was done on purpose so you can customize the actual depth of your tip. So you can either have it a little bit out or a little bit in, so you get kind of more of a seal on your ear cavities to where you're getting maybe a deeper sound, or you can kind of back it out a little bit and kind of not have as much of a pronounced, I guess, bass on it. And because of that, I thought that it was going to be an issue with them sliding out of my ears or sliding off of that. But those things are very, they're a bit wider than I've seen. And because of that, the tips have stayed on my ears with an actual just like really solid seal without it sacrificing some sort of like weird, it gets stuck in my ears, you know? You feel me? You feel me? All right, so now let's get to the functionality of these things. So the sound, like I said, these things were meant to be tuned neutral. So I made a little list of 4 different types of music that I listen to. I listen to hip hop, I listen to metal, I listen to acoustic, and I listen to classic. And I'm going to read off of these. So if my eyes wander down here, I'm not trying to stare. I understand that your eyes are up here, but my notes are right here. So I'm sorry if this makes you feel uncomfortable, and for that, I love you. With the hip hop, there were pronounced lows with really good bass. Depending on the song, some might say that it might be a little bit bass heavy, but the mids and highs were really they were really pronounced. Like you were able to tell like the sound of like a hi-hat. You were able to have a very intelligible lyric when it came down to it. And because of that, it was just a really good listening experience for like any hip hop and rap, especially in stuff on stuff that actually had like a lot of really nice detail. Like if you notice, like on some songs, they have like the sound, like the distinct sound of something that you might hear on like a vinyl track or a vinyl like kind of skipping or a vinyl's like analog sound, and you were able to hear that. You were able to hear that without it really overpowering everything. So next is metal. Metal, the drums I thought were going to be, so going into this, I thought it was going to be kind of a bass heavy, kind of IEM, but the drums were surprisingly snappy. They were snappy, but they weren't like too drowned out. It wasn't really like a boom. It was more like a tap. I know that sounds weird, and I regret making the sound immediately. So the constant low in sounds for them drums might be a little bit fatiguing, just because it's just constantly go, 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 go. And it does have, like I said, it does have a little bit of a pronounced low end, but because of that, it might just be a little too much at times, you know? On some, so I listen to a few different types of metal. I listen to like some like death metal, and then I listen to like some metalcore. And with the metalcore, these sounded really heavy, and with that, I really enjoy heavy music, so it really made me happy. And then like going through and listening to, like I did on the last one, listening to Ghost, because I enjoy like the melodic ballad type music that Ghost puts out. And it was really, really like I said, like all the instruments were pronounced. All of not pronounced. All of the instruments were intelligible. The lyrics were intelligible, and it really just kind of melded everything together, really, really solid. Like, so now let's get to acoustics. So voices, like one of my all-time favorites, Dallas Green. I listened to a song called "The Girl," which is probably one of my all-time favorite songs of all time. That makes sense. So his voice is more on the higher end. He has more of a higher voice that kind of meets in like maybe low mids to low highs. I don't know. I'm not an audio engineer, so please don't rip me apart for having wrong terminology. It sounded really good. And the guitar, I guess, was kind of mid-heavy. And because of that, it wasn't too overwhelming to listen to his voice and to the guitar at the same time and be able to not have some sort of, I guess it would, another word for it would be fatiguing. It wasn't fatiguing. All right. So the last genre I listened to was classic. And holy shit, I ended up listening to, I honestly just went to some random Spotify playlist, and I ended up listening to like multiple songs from like a random classical playlist. These actually ended up bringing out a lot of individuality to each of the instruments, and while also having that individuality, they really melded together. I sound pretentious as hell, but I'm not really trying. I'm trying to explain it the best that I possibly can. One thing that I noticed is like on some of the shrill instruments, like you would hear like the violin or even like the like a flute, it added a little bit of warmness to it, to where it wasn't super shrill, and it gave you just a really good sound to it. Like I said a little bit earlier, I thought these were going to be too big for my ears because I have like one that's smaller than the other. I have really weird ear canals, and I'm very self-conscious about it. And I thought I was going to have to go and use like possibly one of the smaller spring tips, but I ended up not having any extras, so I used the large spring tips, which if you don't know the difference, there's the ones with the white ring that are the small, the gray ring that is the medium, and then the black ring that is the large one. So I ended up putting the large one on there because I was scared that it wasn't going to fit around the actual like ear cavity that goes into my, or the thing that pokes out into my ears. You know what I'm talking about. And because of that, they actually gave a really good seal. Like, I put them in there and I just started trying to shake my head like I was some sort of extra from one of the Silent Hill movies, and it wasn't coming out. It was really, really in there, but not to the point where I took it out and it just, the tip stayed inside of my ears, which, not going to lie, that is probably one of my worst fears. It's not even a fear, I just don't like it. I have a really weird thing with my ears, and they have to stay clean constantly, and it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. Because of how big those are, I will say that there was definitely a little bit of fatiguing. My ears kind of started to get a little bit sore about 30 to 45 minutes into listening. So I don't know how long I could possibly go listening to these. And I don't know if it was the actual like IEM or if it was the tips that I used that were a little bit larger than the ones I usually use. So I'm still going to do a little bit more experimenting, but I will notice that the person whom I got these from did say that they hurt their ears a lot, and hence the reason they got rid of these. And so there's that. It's kind of a, maybe don't use them for hours on end because it might hurt your ears, or if you have big ear canals, good for you. All right, so these are my final impressions. I'm going to probably be reading a little bit of this while also kind of ad-libbing and telling you like what I think. So like I said earlier, I don't really have that much experience with any of the IEMs besides the Moondrops and the S12s. But the higher end ones that I have are the S12s, and with these, they have an entirely different sound. Like I said, the S12s are a planar, so they're more snappy than anything. And with this, it brings a lot more, I guess it would be a smoother transition, less like clap and more just like clap echo. I don't know. The planar versus dynamic is really, really clear when it comes to like listening to them side by side. Because like I said, it's the difference between a snappy and a smooth transition of sound. So I guess like if you're in the market for a little bit more of an expensive IEM while not being like a super high end, like I said, there's like low end, mid tier, and high end. And I feel like this is probably the beginning of mid tier or like middle of mid tier. It's $319, so it's really expensive. These are something that you really have to look into, and you have to really figure out, do you want these? Because there's probably something that might be a little bit more comparable to it. And if there is something comparable to these at like a lower price, please in the comments, tell me what those are, because I'd like to get my hands on those and I'd like to try those out. But there is a reason that it's probably one of the more popular IEMs on the market. And that is, it just has a really solid sound. Well, I guess not being super expensive for how niche of a market the like audiophile IEM market is. So it's not too expensive for what it is, but when it comes down to it, if you're broke, you're broke. And yeah. So I guess going into this, I was really looking for something wrong with these, just because they're so popularized, and I wanted to kind of be a hipster and be like, well, I mean, they weren't that good. No, they were actually really solid, and they had a really good listening experience. Well, besides my ears getting fatigued and me kind of having to take them out and give it a little bit of a rest, they sounded great. They looked great. From what I saw of what it actually comes packaged with, you get a good amount of stuff, especially that carrying case that I really wish I had. But that's neither here nor there. Like, do I want to pay $319 for IEM? No. But if I had it as like a disposable amount of cash, I would. It does sound really good, and I was really surprised on how it sounded. But also, I'm just kind of a cheap ass, so I don't think that I should. Yeah, no, I'm cheap. So yeah. So like I said earlier, I don't really have like a rating system, but I'd probably give it like a 7.5 and an 8, or like an 8 out of 10, because they were really good to listen to. And I really can't complain about it. So if you enjoyed this, let me know. Like, I want to do more in-depth stuff. So if you enjoyed this, let me know. I want to do a little bit more like in-depth stuff when it comes to IEMs and audio and everything like that. I have plans on more videos about audio and stuff like that, but it's more or less just like me getting my hands on the gear to do it. So let me know what you enjoyed about this. Let me know if there's anything further that you kind of want me to go in on. I hope this is in-depth enough to where there doesn't need to be a follow-up for it, But if there is, tell me what you would like for me to follow up on. If you enjoyed the video, give it like the whole like, the thumbs up and everything like that. I'm going to continue doing more videos like this, like I guess review videos, just all around. I'm going to keep the content coming. I'm going to, yeah. So I guess until that next video, I'll see you guys later. And I hope you have a great, wonderful night and you're beautiful. Don't let anybody tell you any different, because if they do, then they're assholes. And don't listen to them. All right. Bye-bye.